All right, so what was the last thing we were discussing in here? We wrote a second version of our constructor, right? One that took in a roll syntax. Oh, is this where we left off? We didn't finish this?
I think we left off at the methods that down a little bit. Go down.
Well, hold on. It doesn't look like we finished this guy yet.
Because we were working on the other thing. I think you did kind of quickly, and then you're just like, I'll show you the.
Yeah, so we need to finish this.
Yeah.
And then there's an easier version.
Okay. So we need to get the int version of quantity and number of sides. So we have them captured inside of quantity string and num side string, right? So now we're going to say quantity is equal to, well, so I spell it right, this dot quantity is equal to, do we know how to convert a, oh, we wrote a method for it, right? String to int, okay. So we're going to call dice roll dot string to int, passing it quantity string. And then we're going to say this dot num sides is equal to dice roll dot string to int num side string. All right. Then we'll give a value to our random object. So r is equal to new random. Like that. So there's our second version of our constructor. That ultimately should set up a dice roll in the exact same way that the original constructor did, except instead of passing it a quantity as an integer and a num size as an integer, it's going to take in a string that looks like 3d8 or 4d10 or 20d20 or 20d12, so on and so forth. That make sense? So to test this, we'll come out to driver. We have our dr3, and we're going to go ahead and do system.out.println dr3.roll, and this should roll our dice for us. It should roll 6d10. And there's our 6d10 being rolled. All right, so we can now create dice rolls two different ways. We can create it with a constructor that takes in a quantity and a number of sides. We can also create it by passing in a dice roll syntax string that looks like that. Make sense? Okay, so let's make some of these things a little bit easier. Now we know about the character class, right? We've seen the character class has some methods in it. One of them is to uppercase. We've seen that one. All right. Is that a class method or an instance method? I just showed you the method definition header here.
Class.
How do you know?
Because it's static.
Okay, it's a class method because we see the word static in the method definition. Why does the character class exist? Go ahead.
Because chars are primitive types and they can't do things to themselves.
Yep. Character class exists because characters can't do stuff like this themselves. You can't ask a char to convert itself to uppercase. We need a helper. We need a factory we can send the chars into. Is the same thing true for other primitive types? Same thing's true for other primitive types. So we have a second class called integer that is built for doing things related to integers. And the integer class has a method called Parse Int. And Parse Int takes a string as a parameter and returns the integer version of that string. That make sense? All right, so this is the method header for that guy. I'm going to come into our dice roll. Here's our current version of string to int. And I'll paste our method header up here. So that's what the method header for parse int inside the integer class looks like. So we're going to need these two top lines. Everybody take out a piece of paper. Yoko Ono up here with the sunglasses.
It is the little rhinestones on the side. Why does it bother you that much?
It does. It's interesting. I'm thinking about snapping a picture during the quiz and put it on Facebook. A blind person taking a quiz in a computer science class. All right. Make sure you get your name on it. Rewrite the string to int method using our brand new tool, this parse int. So write it in terms of that instead of everything we've done up to that point.
You're saying like leave that method.
Leave this method. This method should
Use
still
that
exist.
method within
This
that method?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
This method should still exist. It should still take in a string, and it should still return the integer version of that string. But I want you to, using this new power tool, the parse int method, I want you to rewrite this portion of the method so that it works, but in a more better way. You have 3 minutes, which is 2 minutes more than you need. Hint, hint. Oh man, I got the profuse bleeding symptom combo. Hemophilia and skin lesions are causing the infected to have blood pouring out of their skin, making Mod 6 far more dangerous. That's the name of my plague.
Oh.
Brilliant. Please never do anything related to biology.
Man, I tell you what, you're walking down the street and you see somebody with blood pouring out of their skin. Just the word pouring. It's
Run away.
completely awesome.
We almost got tooth picked this morning.
Really?
Yeah, because I woke up with this headache and it was like super bad, and like I had to puke, but like nothing would come out.
So it could have been a dry heaving video.
Could have been, yeah. Not that talented.
Would have been acceptable. All right, 30 more seconds.
So what would Matt have said if he was take video of you barking?
I think everyone was sleeping, but he probably wouldn't have done it.
How else would you have done it? I mean, you're not exactly going to get a good video quality if you do it yourself.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
Who's gonna hold
You know,
your
because the
camera?
PlayStation 4 has better hardware.
I don't even know why you would argue with him. He's always gonna win.
Yeah, see,
And if he
she's
loses
already
an argument,
arguing.
he's gonna look up research to like come back, and then he's
No,
gonna.
I never lose arguments.
Exactly. So I don't.
But I'm open-minded. I mean, it's completely acceptable to say that the PlayStation 4 is better than the Xbox One and vice versa.
But you're
That's an acceptable argument. You just have to argue it with legitimate facts. The second you start making crap up, the rest of your argument's out the window. It's like when you go to Best Buy and somebody's trying to sell you a computer and the very first thing that comes out of their mouth is something that you know is made up. You don't trust anything else they say. Right? All right, let's have them. Where is everybody?
I asked you that. You didn't answer.
Oh, missing a whole This row. is empty.
Excellent question.
No wonder I gave a quiz.
I showed up and I was like,
It was,
"What are
it
you
was,
puking?"
it was a subconscious attendance quiz.
Oh.
I posted on Facebook last night.
Oh yeah.
How many of you have ever had Portillo's out of Chicago? Good stuff, right? So I teach a grad class on Wednesday nights, and several of the students commute from Chicago, and so they brought me Portillo's. They also brought me 2 chili cheese dogs from Portillo's, and they also brought my wife some chocolate cake for me to take home.
They drive me from Chicago.
Yeah, well, it's one night a week, the grad class. So it's a 4-hour class. Anyways, so they bring me this bribe, you know, and it was so good. So, what does a nice professor do when the students bribe them? You're supposed to give them the benefit of the doubt, right? Now, we did an in-class quiz, so I had time to eat my chili dogs. This isn't going well so far.
I feel like this was a plan skip day.
What's up?
I feel like this was a plan skip day and we were told about it.
We didn't feel like it was worth it to tell you.
All right, so Tim's solution is the first one that's not completely embarrassing. It's not completely right. Okay, finally we get a right answer from Jake. And we get almost a correct answer from Amish. How do you spell integer?
INTGENER.
INTERGER. Integer. Integer.
Oh, it was right
tricky.
there. It was right there, wasn't it?
It's true, yeah.
All right, I'll accept it. So, Amish and Jake got it completely right. Tim got it mostly right, and everybody else completely embarrassed themselves. Man, I don't even get that. The whole question was just about how do you call a method? Class method or instance method?
Class.
How do you know? Static. Which class was it defined in? The integer class. Okay, the integer class. How do you call class methods? Generically, how do you call a class method? That's how you call instance methods. Man, how I yelled at you guys last time for how do you switch those around? I can't wrap my mind
I
around it.
don't switch it down when I write it.
You
but when
call
I say it,
instance methods using instances of classes. You call class methods using the class names. How do you switch that around? It's not like a trick.
Look, if I know that, you know.
Seriously. Yoko Ono.
Did you take a picture?
Maybe.
You'll never know.
Creepers never reveal their secrets. All right, so let's get rid of all that crap. How do we call class methods? We call them using the name of the class. Integer.
Integer.
Done.
Oh, jeez.
Here's your brand new power tool that all of you should have known how to call because we've drilled this into your soul so many times. And 2 1/4 people could call it. You're the quarter.
That was more half.
No, you're actually part of the 2. It's 1.9. See, maybe everybody else should move to the front row since we have the correct answers in the front row. And then the mostly correct answer not that far away. It's kind of like, think about it. I'm like the moon. And I provide gravitational pull. I didn't think this out that much. This is what you get from PS4 hardware.
So as you move around the Earth, do you affect the tides?
Exactly. That's what I was getting at. It's a gravitational thingy, majiggy. I hate all of you. Actually, a couple weeks ago, I compared myself to Yoda.
What?
Why?
How?
Okay, she found
Why would
the
you be
force
like Yoda?
with the-
Huh?
How would you be like Yoda?
Obviously,
Yoda,
it's
yeah,
a
what?
gravitational force.
Well, I mean, so like if you guys are like Padawans in programming, I'm like Yoda, right? True statement?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, except I'm a little taller. I could probably use a cane. It's my favorite scene, like all time movies, when Yoda fights Count Dooku. Just comes.
I guess you would not be able to jump around like you.
That's what makes it so good. Like a guy could barely wobble in. And as soon as he, and then he doesn't even take his lightsaber out with his hand. He just uses the force to pull it out of his belt, and then just starts poning face. Any of your other teachers say they use the phrase "poning face"?
I don't think any of my other teachers would know what that means.
See, I learned about that playing that kid system PS3. All right, does everybody understand this? I gave you a brand new power tool. I showed you everything that you need to call it. Almost all of you missed it, but the important thing is understand that if I gave it to you again, you should be able to do it. I told you the name of the class, integer. I showed you what the method header is. I told you what this guy does. He takes a string as a parameter. He parses the integer out of that string and returns it as an int. It does exactly what this method was built to do. Which basically means we don't need this method anymore. But by putting it inside of this method, I don't have to rewrite the rest of my code. Because I'm already calling this method inside my code. Just now the guts of this method are far simpler. So I can still run my program, and it still works. Make sense? So I've accomplished the exact same task that I was accomplishing in here before, but instead of it taking whatever line, 20 lines or however many lines were in there, it takes 1. That make sense? Okay. Let me make sure I... Now, wouldn't you agree that this looks like a nightmare?
Yes.
How can you see it?
Keep this fine.
Well, wouldn't you say this was kind of difficult to write there, Trista?
A little bit, yeah.
All right, so if I told you to take out another piece of paper
No.
and write that, I couldn't get the one-liner out of
I
you
would
guys.
walk out just like everyone else did.
Man, I'm so like discouraged. Why couldn't we solve that problem? Did I ask it like in a dumb, confusing way? I didn't feel like I did. The quiz that I just gave you.
For some reason, I was thinking more.
3 people basically wrote a competent answer. Out of what? How many we got? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I think 12. Some people's fat heads might be blocking people.
My sunglasses are distracting
So 12. Out of 12 people, only a quarter of you turned in a solution that was even like competent. And we're not. I gave you the benefit of the doubt if your solution was like somewhat, sort of close. Only 3 people made that pile. So what was the deal? Why did we suck on that? Was it my fault? I'm not gonna be offended. Tell me. Did I ask the question poorly?
I think it's just too early in the morning.
What do you mean? It's 10 a.m., 10:30.
My body doesn't wake up till like 1.
That's not the morning. So what you're saying is the mornings don't exist, right?
Yeah.
If anybody has an excuse, it's me. I was up till 10:30 last night teaching this kind of crap
My brain's
to
practically
grad
dead.
students. Then went home and I woke up at 6:30 in the morning and had meetings. See, further proof of the Yoda thing. See, these 2 were like Jedi apprentices. They're not Padawans. No, you're not knights yet.
I'm waiting for the osmosis to start.
Knights,
coming back.
knights, I can send out to the field to do anything, right? Like I feel very confident I can give you a question real quick that you couldn't answer. But then again, given the quiz I just gave, the quality of stuff I gave, I mean, like I was asking other people to like invent teleporters or something. Man, wouldn't that be awesome?
Yes, I'll be the
Life would
first
be so
one to
much
scramble my
easier.
molecules in the name of science, not to get on a plane.
You don't fly?
I hate flying, but I have to. So.
Well, I mean, is it like pain from your ears popping, or you're just afraid of flying?
No, I hate it because I don't like waiting. I'm impatient. I don't like waiting, and I can't stand the cattle call up at the front. And
Okay, so it's more of anxiety about the whole
Yes.
process
yes.
than being. You're not afraid to fly.
I'm not
It's the
afraid.
whole process.
I died the last time I went up flying.
Really?
Yeah, it was, I don't know if it was the pressure, but like my ears were fine, but there was like an extreme amount of pressure behind my eyes. It was the worst pain I've ever been in. I thought my eyes were gonna pop out of my head.
You might have had like a sinus infection or something.
I have no idea, but it was terrible. Like I even used nasal spray and I was chewing gum and all that good stuff. Everything was fine except right when we were landing.
You know, when I was a kid, I used to have that
So bad.
problem. That might have been before they really got good at pressurizing cabins, though.
But like I have a feeling that the plane that I was in, like it wasn't pressurized correctly because like I didn't fall asleep. I literally kept passing out. Like I wasn't tired, but I would literally just like pass out. It was so bad.
There's no
Everyone else
oxygen
was
in
fine.
that's pretty funny.
No, it's not funny. Like I
No.
was in mid conversation with someone and I just like fell asleep.
That's actually kind of hilarious. I just kept passing out. Just the oxygen levels so low. I was talking in circles. Yeah, I had my tonsils out when I was, I want to say like 14 or 15, something like that, which is way too old to have surgery like that. Oh my gosh, I was miserable. But in any case, before that, I used to have a lot of problems flying. Just my ears would pop like horrible, tons and tons of problems. But I'd still do it. And when I was a kid, I was kind of afraid to fly. I didn't like flying. It was scary to me. But now it's like I've been through all sorts of experiences that should make you afraid to fly. I've had dual engine failure in the sky. That was when I was a kid. That was probably what made me afraid to fly the first time around.
Afraid to fly would be a very sad thing, just because everybody in my whole family lives away, and I have to fly, and my husband's family lives in England. So
Have any of you ever been on a propeller plane?
yes.
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 So
They
that used to be
are-
what commercial planes were like.
Yes.
So I one time flew from Champaign, Illinois, Willard Airport in Champaign, Illinois, to Chicago, and it was on these dual prop propeller plane.
You can't stand
The flight was 2 hours, huh?
I said you're that old.
The flight was 2 hours late because they couldn't get the door to shut.
Oh.
So, right off the bat, you know, you're getting some uneasy feelings. Like, sorry folks, we can't take off. The door won't close. You're worried about a slow leak in the pressurized cabin. They can't get the door shut. So finally, I guess they get the door shut, and we're flying. It's like bad storms. And these planes only go so high because they're not like the big jets. These are like little tiny puddle jumpers, literally. So we're flying in the middle of the storm. And we're hitting these air pockets and, you know, flopping all over the place. And I look out the window and I see, I'm the first person who noticed that one of the propellers was no longer spinning.
You think the pilot would notice that, maybe?
Well, I mean, it might have just been I looked first or something before their alarms went off or whatever, if they even had alarms on this, like, Tinker Toy airplane.
Why
But-
would you get in one of those?
My parents told me to. Okay, so anyways, my mom calls the stewardess over and says, my son just noticed that the propeller's not spinning. So she went and told somebody, and captain came over and says, folks, you may have noticed that our, he used it like I think it was starboard side. Something, you know, our starboard side propeller has stopped spinning. Don't worry, our other engine's working just fine, and we can fly on one engine, no problem. 10 minutes later, the other engine goes. And we just start falling out of the sky. So,
Worst thing I ever-
and I'm not even kidding. It felt like we dropped about 10,000 feet almost instantly. And, you know, all the things are coming open and people are puking. My mom stood up in her seat and ripped her seatbelt off. You know, I guess the adrenaline or whatever. My dad leans forward, calm as could be. Just, Gail, that's my mom's in there. I don't like this. So I'm sitting next to my mom. My brother's sitting next to my dad. Just couldn't be calmer. So finally, you hear like them trying to start the engines, you know, and it's like a car. This isn't like these like cool sounding jet engines. This sounds like somebody trying to start their Honda in Target's parking lot. So finally, they get the original engine that had stopped started, and we fly in on that.
I don't understand why they didn't try to start that other one while it already.
No, they probably were, and they failed. But out of desperation, it's like, okay, we have no engines now.
And yeah, we went on our honeymoon, we went to Alaska, and we had Horizon Air, and they have notoriously really little planes. And my husband couldn't even stand up, because you're tall too.
Mm-hmm.
So he was just, he was all uncomfortable, because he's like, he is.
When you think I'm uncomfortable to plane, think about the person next to me.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like whoever has to sit next to you should get a free ticket.
Seriously. Also, I mean, that was just one example. There's another time we were flying into Arizona.
Do you ever get compensated for that? Like, sorry, you almost died.
Well, I don't know if we did that time. I was too young. You know, I'm sure my family probably complained. Saying thank you for almost killing us. But this one happened when I was a little older. We were flying into, I think it was Phoenix Airport, and it was like super heavy fog. I think it was cold for some reason, and it's usually really warm there. So a bunch of fog and it seemed like we were like landing forever. You know, like going down for a long, long time, but you can't see anything outside. And then finally we dip under the cloud, and we are on top of houses. Okay? We are nowhere near the airport. So, and like you're thinking, okay, well maybe this is like a residential area near the airport. No, you knew real quick that it wasn't, because the captain just gunned the engine and pulled straight back. I mean, we were like it was like a rocket going on. I mean, you got to get a real feeling for how low they keep those engines under normal circumstances, like what their capabilities are beyond what they usually run you at. I mean, this guy probably burned through $50,000 worth of fuel in about 5 seconds. I mean, he just gunned it. So he get back up and he says, "Sorry about that, folks. Let's give that another shot." Let's see. Another time I was flying into St. Louis Airport from San Antonio, and all the flights earlier was a blizzard in St. Louis, and all the flights earlier in the day had been canceled. And they finally got one runway open in St. Louis. So they packed everybody onto a bigger plane later on in the afternoon out of San Antonio, took off, flew in. We were already too far in to return when I guess they got another 9 inches of snow in about 20 minutes. Some crazy, just snowdrop in St. Louis. So the runway was closed again, but we had to land. We had no option. We didn't have fuel to not land. So we were landing on a closed runway in St. Louis that was snow-packed and iced and all this stuff. So they have us take these crash positions, which I guess now they've proven is a bad idea. So, they have us do the crash position where you put your head between your leg type thing. That way your neck snaps immediately. So it's over quickly is I guess the... But that was one of those things where you were pretty. It wasn't all that scary because you knew you were going to kind of get onto the ground. Then it was kind of
You guys slide off.
yeah, you just didn't know what that whole process after you were on the ground was going to kind of be like. And it actually was kind of uneventful. So they had us take these crash positions, and we fishtailed just a little bit, but it turned out not to be, it was way overhyped. Is what it ended up being. Let's see.
Those are the reasons that I do not want to fly.
See, one more. There's actually more than one more, but I'll just tell one more. We were taking off out of Atlanta Airport, which is actually the busiest airport in the world. If you didn't know that. Yeah. So we're taking off out of Atlanta Airport, and we are, on the runway, full speed. Let's call it 3 seconds from in the air. All of a sudden, he just crazy powers down. The front of the plane goes. I mean, just aborted takeoff. Pulls into the grass. I mean, this is not a little plane. This is a 3x3, a 200 passenger aircraft. And so he pulls out into the grass after this aborted takeoff, where you're wondering, did we damage the landing gear in the front type thing? And we're in the grass. He said, "Sorry, folks, we had an indicator light go off. We're going to check it here." And so we sit there for 20 minutes. And then he just starts the engines back up or whatever. I think they were already on, but pulls back onto the taxi area. So he didn't pull back onto the active runway, but pulls into the taxi area. We're going to try this again. So you're in a plane that just aborted a takeoff. He pulls off into the grass, and then we're going to go try this again. Don't you think you should take this back and have it checked? Something. So it was a pretty hard, takeoff, abort thing. And so we get back in line, get to about the same point again. All of a sudden, somebody, I don't know if it was one of the stewards or the captain himself or the co-captain, whatever, somebody comes over the intercom, like cell phones off, panicking. like screaming in the thing. And then we took off uneventful.
Apparently, what is it, the FAA or something is not requiring
Yeah,
cell phones to be shut off anymore.
Yeah, they're allowing you to have your all your crap on. I never turned mine off anyway.
I never did either.
That's why we have aborted takeoffs when I'm on the plane.
Oh, never mind.
Cell phone's off! Cell phone's off!
Did you turn yourself
No,
on?
let me sometimes just let him have his phone.
No, but that made me a little nervous.
I wonder how
I
many
get-
people were like,
Yeah. Like, I mean, it seems like, you know, when you're like that close to takeoff after just aborting a takeoff and spending 20 minutes in the grass, that if you're that panicked right before takeoff, why don't we take this thing in towards the hangar and let's check things out. Yeah. Yeah, let's not give it the old 15,000-foot college try.
Comes with a loudspeaker, so that might not have been such a good idea.
Yeah, it's somewhere in their manuals. It must be like, even if something bad is happening, don't panic the the clients. You don't come over the speaker screaming and with extremely panicky voice. It wasn't like please turn your cell phones off. It was like, cell phones off, cell phones off, go down. All right. Maybe another day I'll tell you some of my stories of bathroom incidents on airplanes.
See, now you mentioned it. Now you kind of have to.
That keeps you coming back for the sequel. All right, so
And the fact that I'm paying for this class.
you can't pay for this kind of entertainment.
We did.
Okay, so now let's go and write some cool stuff. Do we understand? Oh, actually, hold on. What was I was about to do something, wasn't I? Oh, I was about to show you the easier way of doing all this crap, right? But before we do that,
I know that quiz.
no, you guys couldn't pass that quiz. You'd be wasting my time giving you another quiz. All right, let's go out here to driver, and we want to write some methods. We need some practice writing some methods here because we're sucking pretty bad. Okay, wait, what class is this?
250.
Awesome. All right, so let's say that we have a string. And let's say that string looks like this. 123 plus 5 minus 2 times 7. Okay? So we're going to call that an expression. And let's say we want to write a method that processes a string like this. It supports plus, minus, times, and we'll say divide. Divided by 2. So it supports all those different operators. And your expression should work on things as simple as just 123. For that, it should turn it into the integer 123. It should work on things like 123 plus 5, in which it should return a 128, so on and so forth. It should process the mathematical expression. You do not need to take into account orders of operation. So you don't need to do multiplication first and division first before you do addition and subtraction. So you just literally process it left to right. Okay, that makes sense? What we're trying to accomplish? So, we want to write a method. And we'll go ahead and write it here inside driver, so we'll make it a static method. Going to return an int called process expression. It's going to take a string as a parameter. Where is Evan?
Where's everyone else?
Like, I have a meeting with Evan after this class.
Do you really? Tell you, it's probably all
Texted?
plans.
Huh?
Text him.
Well, no, I don't care about that much. But he's buying me lunch. Now. Clearly, I have Facebook evidence that I'm now accepting bribes. And giving quizzes as... And there's no way any of them pass that quiz either. It's funny. So it was to their detriment that I needed time to eat my chili dogs. Teach them to keep bringing me food. All right.
Yeah, I noticed you were eating that. Wasn't there like buns with that and gluten?
I got so sick. It was awesome. Man, it was not good. But if you've ever had Portillo's, part of the experience is how good their hot dog buns are. The poppy seeds are homemade bun. Oh my god, so good. Totally worth the sickness.
What is it? Portillo's?
Portillo's. Yeah, it's a medium-sized chain out of Chicago, like Chicago-style food. So Italian beefs, hot dogs. That's probably our two main things, and then their chocolate cake's really good.
Cake shakes too.
My family loves the French dip.
That's just an Italian beef done wrong. Durr.
I don't care. I just like
And these guys were so the students were so accommodating too. They didn't know if I wanted cheese on my chili dog, so they actually had them put the cheese on the side. But they don't use melted cheese. They use actual cheese and then melt it there. So I had like a block of cheese. So I had a cheese stick that came with it. It's very, very nice of them. In which they got a quiz in return. But yeah, I was really sick because I have a pretty decent gluten allergy. It was totally worth it.
Did you take pictures?
Yeah, it's on Facebook.
Oh, awesome.
Okay, so we want to write this function called, or this method called process expression. It's going to take a string as a parameter. The string is going to look something like that, where the minimum the string will look like, here, I'll just write it in here. The minimum thing you might take in is something that's just a number. Or it's a number followed by an operator followed by another number, 0 or more times. That make sense? So this whole square bracket thing here, that is like optional. So that means that I could take in a number, or I can take in a number followed by an operator followed by a number, or I can take in a number followed by an operator followed by a number followed by an operator followed by a number. Every single time you have an operator, it's going to be followed by a number. That make sense? So we need to be able to process a string of any length mathematically. So what are some of the problems we're going to run into with this? So if we use this as our example string, if that's our input, how would you solve that problem? What's our first issue? So we're going to do this in a nightmare way, and then I'll show you an easy way to do it. If you're solving this problem as a human being, what are we going to do? We're going to look through here. We're going to say, okay, well, we have the number 123, correct? Now we're going to add to that what? We're going to add a 5. Now we have a 128. Now we're going to subtract from that what? A 2. We have a 126. Then we're going to multiply that by 7. That was the... Multiply that by 1. So we still have a 126. Then we're going to divide that by, was it 2? 63? So our answer is 63. 63 times 2 is 126. All right, so this should ultimately produce a 63. Because I was afraid of multiplication. All right? But now, as a human being, that wasn't that bad, right? As a human being, we were able to pick out the individual tokens. We could see that we have a 123, we have a 5, we have a 2, we have a 1, we have a 2. And what are the operators? A plus sign, a minus sign, a multiplication sign, and a divide. So a human being could pick those things out easily, visually, right? But now we got to write a program that's going to do this. So we need to be able to get those individual tokens. So let's start off, instead of actually solving the full problem, we need to start off with baby steps. Let's say that I want to just print out the numbers. 123, 5, 2, 1, 2. But I want to print out those numbers one number per line. So I need to go and find the numbers. How do I do that? What's guaranteed to be the first thing I run into in this string? A number. At least one digit, right? So the first thing I'm going to run into here is a number. Okay? So, as I go through this string, am I going to have to check every single character in this string? So we have our patterns, our problem-solving pattern, which means I'm going to have a loop that's going to go through the string, right? So we'll go ahead and write our default loop. I equals 0. I is less than s dot length. I plus plus. So that's our stock loop for spinning through a string, named s. Now, as I am walking through this string, I know that I'm going to run into numbers first, right? And when do I know that that number is done? When I hit an operator. As soon as I hit something that's not a number, or more, maybe more specifically, as soon as I hit something that looks like a plus sign, a minus sign, a multiplication sign, or a division sign, I know that the thing I just finished reading is the end of is a number. That makes sense? And for this example right here, we're going to assume there's no spaces in here, no extra spaces, to make our life a little easier. So, as I'm walking through this string, reading in the 1, then the 2, then the 3, what do I want to be doing with those guys? I'm going to be collecting them. Inside what? How would I collect a character, followed by another character, followed by another character? In a string. So we're going to build that thing up. So we're going to create a starting point string called cur num, and we'll start this guy off at the empty string. That way we have something we can build our numbers into. So the first time through, cur num will be equal to whatever it currently is plus the character 1. Next time, it'll be what it currently is plus the character 2. So now it's the string 1, 2. Next time through, it'll be what it currently is plus the character 3. So it'll be the string 1, 2, 3. Then when we read in the plus sign, we know that cur num holds one of our numbers. That make sense? So, I want to ask a question if I am looking at an operator. How do I know if I'm looking at an operator? Go ahead. Go ahead.
If the char at the location that we're at is equal to the plus sign or minus or multiplication or divide.
Okay. So let's go ahead and write a method for that. Let's write a little function that solves a very specific problem. That is, it takes a char as a parameter because we're going to be looking at individual chars, right? So we're going to take a char as a parameter and we want to return true if that char is an operator and false otherwise. So we're going to have this guy be static. And if I'm returning a true or false, what will my return type be? Boolean. And we'll call this guy is operator. And he's going to take a char as a parameter. And inside here, I want to return true if C is an operator and false otherwise. So that's what this method's going to do. Remember way back when we first started talking about difficulties in programming? One of our difficulties in programming is we try to make every problem more complex than it actually is. You need to take baby steps. Okay, I probably referenced the movie What About Bob? Did I do that? Bill Murray? How many of you have seen What About Bob? You haven't seen What About Bob?
No, I know. It's something that.
Well, I mean, I get that some of the age group that's in here hasn't heard of it, but she's old, so.
No, I'm really old.
You know who Bill Murray is, right? Bill Murray's like a cult figure now, right? Yeah. He used to be the star of Ghostbusters. And he was like the Tom Hanks back then. So he, like Tom Hanks says he's important, although he's getting old now too, isn't he? So when Bill Murray was Tom Hanks was Steve who was Tom Hanks at the time?
He's in Big, I think.
Well, yeah. So what can you compare him to? Like Justin Bieber or something?
Justin.
No, probably not that bad. But he was not a famous actor at the time. So in any case, the idea with What About Bob, just to give you I would encourage you to go and watch the movie. It's a good movie. It's about this guy, played by Bill Murray, who has a lot of social anxiety, all sorts of problems. Basically, he can't do anything. And a psychiatrist gives him a book that he wrote. So a psychiatrist is played by Richard Dreyfuss, another famous actor that you probably don't know who he is. But anyways, the psychiatrist was all pompous and all into himself and all this stuff. And, he wrote the book, signed it for his patient, gave it to him. But the name of the book was Baby Steps. Okay? And the idea is that to help Bob get through life, he had to take baby steps through life. Don't worry about what's going to happen at the bus stop. Worry about how you're going to get through the door in front of you. Then how are you going to get onto the elevator? Then how are you going to, each individual piece. So I relate it because it literally takes this guy who can't solve the problem of life. But when he breaks it down into little tiny baby steps, he's actually able to sort of kind of get by. And then the movie gets funny because the pompous psychiatrist goes on vacation with his family up in the Hamptons or whatever. And Bob is so grateful that his life has changed, so he goes and basically haunts this guy during his vacation and just bothers him and his family. But everybody loves Bob, except the psychiatrist who thinks this guy's ruining his life. And it's funny. But in any case, the idea is taking things into little tiny baby steps. So what I'm doing is I'm writing a little tiny function, a little tiny method. All this method does is takes a character as a parameter and returns true if it's an operator and false if it's not. So it's kind of like I ran out to Home Depot and bought a little tool. And I use this tool for a very specific task. And when I use enough tools in the correct order, I actually can solve a very big problem. That make sense? So one of the patterns I like to focus on with beginning programmers is writing little widgets that you can then put together to solve bigger problems. It's almost like playing Legos. You get the Lego that's the right shape to solve the problem of the thing you're currently building. All right, so I'm solving a simple problem called isOperator, takes a char as a parameter, should return a Boolean value true if that char is an operator, which means it is either a plus sign, a minus sign, a multiplication sign, or a division sign. So what are we going to do? We're going to say if C is equivalent to a plus sign, or C is equivalent to a minus sign, or C is equivalent to a multiplication sign, or C is equivalent to a division sign. If any of those are true, return true. Otherwise, return false. Now, I actually wrote it pretty verbosely here because I actually could have just returned the result of this. I didn't even have to use an if statement. I could have just said return that. And why is that? Because I say if this is true, return true. If this is false, return false. So why don't I just return this? That make sense? But this is more explicit. It allows us to ask a question. In fact, you might even like this even better if I throw the return false inside of an else. If this is true, return true. Otherwise, return false. So this is the super explicit version. Although the previous one worked just fine because I would not have gotten to the return false line if I had hit this line. Because the method would have immediately ended. When you hit a return statement, the method's over. All right? So here's a function called isOperator that I can pass a char to, and it will return true if what I just passed it is an operator. Make sense? So I just went to Home Depot, got a widget. I'll go ahead and collapse that down. I'll minimize it using that guy. So now inside here, I can now ask a question. I can ask, am I currently looking at an operator? How do I ask that question? Somebody help me ask the specific question here of how do I know if I'm currently looking at an operator, if the character at bucket I is an operator using our new tool from Home Depot. Brought to you by Nabisco. I'm going to ask a question. So when I ask a question, what do those start off with? If. So if. Now, ifs have Boolean expressions associated with them, right? What's a Boolean expression? Any expression that boils down to a single value of true or false. So the question I'm going to ask is, if the current character I'm looking at is a operator. So anybody is allowed to ask this question, to answer this question, except Amish, Abe, and Tim. I need to come up with a better name for Tim. I mean, Abe has like a built-in nickname. You don't mess with that. Although you could say Jordan kind of has a built-in nickname. By the way, that's his real name, in case you didn't know. Amish's birth name is Jordan. So that's kind of a cool name in and of itself, but we couldn't pass up the opportunity for. That's right. Actually, to keep things confusing, what we should do is name Tim Jordan.
Oh gosh.
Name swap.
Well, it's not a swap because he doesn't have that name anymore.
It's gone.
So anybody but those three can answer it because I'm basically asking the same exact question that I asked you on the quiz. Here's a tool that allows us to ask a question of whether or not something is an operator. I want you to call the tool correctly. So I want to create a Boolean expression here that boils down to true if the character I'm currently looking at, that is s.char@I, if that particular character, I'm just giving away the farm here, if that particular character is a operator, I want this guy to boil down to true. How would I write this? Will I be using my new power tool? Yes, I'm going to use this guy. Is he a class method or an instance method? Class method. How do you know? Static. How do we call class methods? Use the name of the class in which the method was defined. What's the name of this class? Name of the class is driver. Name of the method is his operator. So how do I call that method? Driver dot is operator. This guy expects a char as a parameter. What char am I going to give him? I is an int. I already had it written up there. I've hidden it temporarily. What character am I going to pass into that method? Generically speaking, I'm going to pass in the character that I'm currently looking at in my string. That is the character at position I in my string. How do I get the character at position I in my string? Who's char@I? s.char@I. So, if driver.isOperator of s.char@I, if that guy boils down to true, I am looking at an operator. Correct? Now remember, right now the problem we're solving isn't the full problem. We just want to print out numbers. Correct? So if I'm looking at an operator, what do I know just happened? If I'm walking through this string, I read in the 1, I read in the 2, I read in the 3, and then I hit an operator. So if I just bumped into an operator, what do I know just happened?
Cur word is the end of a number. Like it's at the end of a number now. You have the whole number there that you're.
Yeah, I haven't collected it yet, but I know that I have a number to display. Correct? So if I'm looking at a plus sign here, I know that I probably collected 1, 2, 3. So I'll go ahead and I'll print out system.out.println kernel, because that's the string I intend to collect my numbers in. After I print it, I'll go ahead and set kernum equal to the empty string, so I'm prepared to start reading in a new number. That make sense? Otherwise, if I'm not looking at an operator, I must be looking at what? A number. Must be looking at a number. And when I'm looking at a number, what do I do with it? If I just read in a 1, I'm looking at a number. That's a 1. What do I do with that 1? Collect it. Add it to kernum. What do I do with the 2? Collect it. What do I do with the 3? Collect it. So if I'm not looking at an operator, I'm going to say curnum is equal to whatever curnum is currently equal to, concatenated with s.char at I, the character I'm looking at. That make sense? So as of right now, what does this process expression guy do? Here at the very end, I'm just going to return an empty string since this guy expects me. I'm actually going to return a -1 since he expects me to return an int. So I'm not solving the big problem yet. I'm only doing a simple problem. So process expression takes in a string, goes through that string, and prints out all the numbers it finds. 1 number per line. That's the problem it's currently solved. That make sense? All right, let's test this. Driver dot process expression. I'll pass it S. So I should get 123 on one line, 5 on the next, 2 on the next, 7 on the next, 2 on the last. Oh, I'm still printing out my dice roll, so just ignore the 40. It's like, where did that come from? So here, we'll get rid of our dice rolls for right now. There's my 4 numbers. That make sense? Okay. What would I do next? Now that I've proven that I can extract those numbers, am I getting the final 2? Did I not get the final 2? 123, 5, 2, 7. Oh, I gotta do one additional thing here. I need to print out system.out.println curnum. Because the last time through we didn't hit an operator. Last time through we hit the end of the string. So we collected our last number inside of curnum. Make sense? It's stuck in there for right now. So we'll just print that out. And there's our 2. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you all this code as a starting point. And I want you, for your homework assignment, due Tuesday, to write process expression in its completion. That is, if you passed it something like this, it should return a 63. If you passed it something like this, it should return a 123. If you passed it something like this, it should return a 128. So on and so forth. Make sense what I'm asking you to solve? So this is your starting point. I'll give you all this code as a starting point. I'll put it up on Angel, and that is due on Tuesday. So what I want you to do is I want you to paste your code into Angel as your solution, because attaching .java files does not work. Okay? And I'll mention that in Angel. All right, I will see everybody on Tuesday.